I don't have all the answers as much as I want everybody to think I have all of the answers or make it appear as though I have all the answers or so. And sometimes I am okay at that. But at that time I didn't. And I needed to go through that in order to get to the spot of humility in my life to say, all right, Jesus, I'm surrendering. I'm calling uncle and I need you. And I did not know. I thought I had faith at that point. And then Jesus showed me, he says, oh, you think you're like, it's that difference between belief and trust. I believed in him and believed in him deeply. And I would say I had many radical acts of trust throughout my life. But that was the first time I really felt that it was a complete and utter act of trust. Like I could not rely on any of my gifts, of any of my skills. I said, Jesus, I'm just surrendering this all to you because nothing's going according to my plan. And that was the moment where I felt this is what real faith is. And I had just encountered it 2.5 years ago, and I was a priest for 5.5 years at that point.
Welcome to the Ron Huntley Leadership Podcast, helping leaders be a positive catalyst on the people they support, the organizations they serve, and the communities they live. This podcast will make you think, laugh, and grit your teeth with new determination to make your parish or business a place of transformation, passion, and purpose. If you're still breathing, you are power for impact.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Ron Huntley. Welcome to the Leadership Podcast. I love having conversations that get us thinking and talking about things that matter, things that make a difference. You know, being a priest is not easy. We all know that. And at what point does somebody decide to get coaching? Why do they decide to get coaching? It's all kinds of different reasons. But I'll tell you, very seldom do I see a young pastor decide to get coaching. My guest today is Father Adam Cesarek, and he is and has been getting coaching from Amazing Parish. He's doing a course with me right now. It's been so fun to get to know him, and we're going to break open a little bit about where he's at, how he got there, and his hopes for the future. Father, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Ron. Yeah, it's always fun, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement to visit with you, and hopefully we'll get somewhere where the Lord wants us to get to today.
I have no doubt in that whatsoever. It's been a treat getting to know you and your brother priests in the Diocese of Peoria as we've been working together. And one of the things, actually, maybe for the sake of our listeners, what have been some of the influences in your life that have kind of led you to grow deeper in your love for Jesus and his church?
Sure. Just simple enough. I Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. I ended up going to a Catholic camp, a Catholic college, not because I was super excited to go to a Catholic campus, but because they recruited me for baseball. And so I went there, and little did I know what the Lord had in store. My junior year of college, Focus showed up on the campus, Fellowship of Catholic University students, and I didn't intend on getting involved in a Bible study or getting involved in what they had to offer, but thanks be to God, the Holy Spirit kept pushing me between the missionary on the campus and a girlfriend at the time who was telling me, why don't you get more engaged in your faith? And so sometimes we guys need a woman in our life to tell us to do the right kinds of things. And
It's so true.
so I went to that Bible study expecting I'd never go back, but it was really among that group of guys where I realized, wow, like something good is happening here. I always desired that, especially depth of conversation and about our faith and challenge to be holy. And so that's, I would say, how the Lord reached me more than anything else. My family grew up in the faith. Thanks be to God. That was a great gift, a good foundation. But I'd say I fell in love with Jesus specifically through the gift of missionaries with Focus when I was on campus and seeing their witness of faith that led me to want to have more as well. So that was the starting point. I could say, a lot more about that, but I'd say maybe the biggest thing on that front is it led me to become a Focus missionary. And when I became a missionary, I saw the faith alive like I had never seen the faith alive before. I said, wow, this is what I desire. This is where I want to go. And so I would say being a missionary and being around other holy people who are on fire for Jesus and our Catholic faith was the biggest thing to lead me down the path to where I am today.
I love hearing that, and I know Focus and CCO and Net Ministries, they've done an amazing, and they continue to do amazing work at bringing people at a particular age into an experience and encounter with Christ and call them to so much more. And it's so beautiful. Just recently, I had Louis Kane on, and he too was a Focus missionary. And he just talked about how difficult it was going from being a missionary in that community and then winding up in a parish that felt like death warmed over a lot of times. Has that been your experience? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah. Even, one of the, because I was kind of bitter when I had to leave Focus. I kind of thought I'd do that forever.
Right.
God called me to the seminary, and I went there kind of kicking and screaming. And everybody had even kind of said when I'd go to seminary that all the fraternity will blow you away. And I was like, well, I don't know that the fraternity can get much better than what I had there, and I had great brothers and great gifts and priesthood and as a seminarian, but it really was it was a faith alive in a way that I hadn't seen before. And then you go to the parishes, as friends of mine from Focus will say from time to time, that Focus was the greatest blessing and the greatest curse that we've ever received in our life all at the same time, because it shows you what could be, like the amazing nature of running with all these people on fire for Jesus and the faith. And then you go into a parish and you say, oh, this is not the experience of what I remember when I was a missionary. And that even when you go through seminary, you understand that, but you kind of think, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to fix it all. I'm going to save it all from the boringness and the mundane and the mediocrity that everybody is comfortable with. And going in with that kind of, I don't know, in some sense, my own arrogance of thinking I'm gonna do this and use my own gifts and my own skills and my own abilities to accomplish this. I'm gonna save the church. Thank you, Jesus. And always and fall into that trap of thinking I'm gonna be the one to do this. If it's not here, I'm gonna make it happen. And that is where really I'd say got me going down the path that I knew I needed some help. You can speak as much or as little about that as you want.
Oh no, let's crack that
in.
open. No, that's that's gold right there. We're not avoiding that topic. Yeah.
Okay. I so yeah, I'm a kind of, I guess, an anomaly to some extent. I'm the only priest. Seminary, there was 40 guys in my class, and of those 40 men, I think I'm the only one at the same parish that I started at. Usually young guys end up moving quite a bit to get different experiences and encounter different pastoral approaches. For whatever reason, I'm still at the same parish. Bishop always used to tell me he was going to move me, but I kept sticking around. And so I moved.
And then you get a new bishop.
Exactly. Yep. And so I was the assistant here for, I guess it was 4 years. And then my going into my 5th year as a priest, I was invited to be the administrator. The administrator role, for those of you who don't know, is generally for guys who haven't been pastors before. And just in case they have no idea what they're doing, we're going to pull them out before they become the pastor. And so that's generally, and that I became the administrator. So starting to learn, what to do, how to do it. I had been taking on more strategic plans even when I was the assistant. So and then I came in, and I guess we'll get to to the serious stuff from there. I thought that I could fix all of the problems, a little bit of the Messiah complex. I thought that, my charming, positive disposition would just be able to get everybody in the parish to just get on board. They all know me. They've spent 5 years with me.
That's
and
true,
so I thought really I'd be able to just go all in really quickly. And instead of everybody running with me, I pushed everybody to a level. I don't know, in Amazing Parish moves talk about performance and humanity. And in the middle of those two is human dignity. And I would probably score myself at that point 90% performance and 10% humanity. Wow. And just pushing, and I thought, well, if they're not like, it's good for them in the long run. Like that dad who just tells your kids, this is going to be what you do, whether you like it or not.
Right.
And I started to sense that in me. I said, that was, and then in the middle of all of that, like as I was just getting some things going, and I always kind of say it this way, as I had basically a whole bunch of dead bodies around me because I'd pushed them so hard. And a bunch of angry people who were just frustrated, like you're pushing us so hard. You're putting your in. That was always I always considered it a gift, like just being able to have a strong willpower and discipline. And my coach, and amazing, and when I eventually got to coaching, and I'll get to that more in detail, but
Sure.
he revealed to me, he's like, Father, you're very faithful, you're very disciplined, and you're very courageous. The problem is you lack wisdom. And that's
This is what a
not
fellow
me.
likes to hear. Wait a minute, I'm the priest.
And and I had to go to some really, like, when you're a super, and just admittedly, the sin that I've struggled with in my life is pride and stubbornness. Um, and I didn't know that. I just thought everybody followed in the past because I was positive and I was joyful, and everybody just said, "Oh yeah, we'll follow him." And it turns out maybe I learned a little bit that the reason that they followed is if they didn't follow, I would outwill them and just tell them, like, this is what we're going to do anyhow. Because if you could tell me why you have a better idea, then I'd go with it. But if you couldn't tell me, then we're going with mine. And I just kept bulldozing people, and that really hurt because my thought was, I hadn't put the humanity and performance side to it before. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put all of I call them the doers at the parish, and then the spiritual people at the parish. My thought was like, oh, I'll be able to get them all to figure out how to work together. I'm going to put them all together, and I'm going to make them work together, and I'm going to be able to solve this problem. I'm going to make the doers spiritual, and I'm going to make the spiritual people doers. And in turn, I just made them all mad, and many of them, like, just said, I don't want to be involved there, And I was like,
Right.
ooh, that's so. I in the process of all of that, COVID showed up, and I always
Saved
had the
everybody.
I always, exactly.
Saved by COVID, yeah.
And in some sense, thanks be to God, it did, because I was pushing all of that, and I had to learn some really big lessons that I need to be humble in a way that I did not know I needed to be humble. Everything, at that point, purposelessness starts to settle in. I always said, if I'm gonna be a pastor and I don't have a parish on fire, then I'll just go hunt them down and, get them. But I couldn't even do that in COVID. I could do nothing. What's the point? I was purposelessness. And I tend to be the one to solve problems and come up with solutions. And that's how I kind of identified myself as, like, I'm a solutions guy, and I was coming up with no solutions. So I isolated myself even more during that time. I didn't want to talk to my family because I didn't want them to know I was going through this as well. So I want to talk to mom, because mom's going to call out what she sees in me. And if I talk to her, she's going to say, what's wrong with you? And thanks be to God, finally, she did start to call some of that. I remember her saying this. It was such a humbling conversation. And she shared everything that she wanted to share. And after she shared everything, she says, how are you? I said, I'm fine. Things are good. And she knew that was a lie. And she said, it is amazing to me how we can be in the middle of a worldwide pandemic and everybody is losing their minds, but my son's fine. He's just doing great, and so that conversation really, those kind of things where I realized, like, my life is kind of falling apart. Everything I thought I was good at, I can't do, or I'm not doing well. I realized, I said, this is going to be a time in these next months, however long this COVID thing lasts, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I said, I always said to everybody should be in counseling. It's time to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to go into counseling, and I'm going to learn, I know that I tend to think things than feel things. And so I know I need to work on, I know people who come to me tend to be people who are thinkers more than feelers. And I'm not as good with people who are feeling through things, even when people would say it to me. Like, I feel that. I was like, oh, don't tell me that. I want to know what you think, not what you feel. And I was like, and those clear things that became reality to me of Oh, shoot. Like I have to work on what's going on inside of me and stop bulldozing myself to do things that I think I'm supposed to do and listen to what God's trying to say. So I did the counseling thing. I got much more serious about spiritual direction. I had like 6 coaches in my life. I was like, I got to work on my eating habits. So I had like, all these different things that this is just who I am. And then in the process of all of that, I discovered that coaching is available for leadership through Amazing
Mm,
Parish as well, which I had worked with before, but I didn't know they had coaching.
mm,
And so I kind of just said, if I can't do anything or help anybody or anything like that, let's become a better human being by the grace of God with some people who can show me that, because I'm clearly not doing that well, or at least in the way I thought I should. And let's work on the things that I'm not doing well. So I did that. That's what I kind of spent my COVID doing, is working on
yeah.
all of those areas that I could do something about. And that was focusing on me becoming a better person by the grace of God, and some
Mm,
other people who could help me get there. So that's how I got into coaching after a whole lot of mess. It was awful. Like stubborn,
mm,
prideful people, it takes you getting to the pit, bottom of the pit.
right.
When you kind of have any level of success as a stubborn, prideful person, you can kind of hold on to that.
Yeah.
At that point in my life, it was the first time where I felt nothing in my life is going successfully according to how I would like it to right now. Uh, and I remember this line came to mind. This is probably, I don't know if this is an appropriate line, but it's like,
Yeah.
turns out if everybody around you in your life seems like the asshole, maybe they're not the asshole, Um, and I had to realize that, like, maybe it's me. Maybe I am the guy that is making everybody miserable. And in the process, um, I had to learn that.
Yeah.
So that was a big one. And so thanks be to God, the Holy Spirit entered in and beat my
Mm.
pride down, and he still has to do that some days. But by the grace of God, I'm a different person because of all of those things and those
Right.
ugly times.
Isn't that amazing? Thank you for sharing that, by the way. I really mean that because, I can just hear some people listening to this podcast now, maybe some pastors who are way further along in their priesthood, and hopefully they've come to the same conclusions you have. But I know they'd be saying to themselves, I wish I would have learned what you know. I wish I would have learned it when
Mm.
I was at that point in my vocation as a priest, because for a lot of guys, it takes a lot longer to learn what you learned. Because, you're probably highly apostolic in terms of a charism, and you're a real driver in terms of your personality. And one of the things I was saying to you earlier, I've been enjoying uh, working with the Diocese of Peoria and the priests that Bishop Lou put together. Uh, and as you share, or there's another guy who shares too, and you guys have a very similar personality, and both of you will be smirking while the other one's sharing. And I'm quietly killing myself laughing because I know you both have that driver personality, that strong will, that, different levels of success and things you've done in the past that you're taking to what you do. And I actually admire that personality. And there's all kinds of different ways to lead, and they can all be effective. But it just makes me smile because I know how hard you try. Like, being an athlete as well, you don't become a good athlete who gets recruited to play ball just showing up and playing with your sister. I mean, not that your sister's not good at ball, but you have to train. You have to get coaching. You have to compare yourself to others. You have to try harder, wake up earlier, work through fatigue, all kinds of things as an athlete to be great. And then to have that success as a missionary, you probably do okay in the seminary and enjoy your brother priests, and then do well as an associate, and then to begin to experience that level of pain and failure as a priest, as a pastor. Like, that must have been dark. Like, that would be hard.
It was. And you learn these things in seminary, you learn these things in life that, you know, that you will carry the cross, you will bear the cross. And that was a time that was maybe I'd say a year or so of my life was probably the darkest time of my life. And I always knew that, we are a Paschal mystery church, suffering, death, resurrection. But in the middle of that suffering, I was like, Jesus, I know this suffering and this death is good for me, but this sucks. Like I wanted out. I was like, when's the resurrection going to come? And the resurrection did come, and I'd say I'm living that at this point a little bit more. And God's, every day is a little bit of a Paschal mystery, suffering, death, and a little bit of a resurrection. But I mean, never had I experienced that kind of darkness before. And, I would say a pivotal conversation in that time for me was, I don't think he'd care if I shared this. It was a conversation with my brother,
Yeah.
Who, my brother, his just different moments in his life where he struggled with depression and things like that. And I always knew it was in our family. It's in a lot of people in our family. And, I always thought I could outthink it. I was like, I know what it looks like enough, to outthink it. And then in that time, I was like, oh, this is how they feel. And I remember the one person I didn't want to talk to about it was my brother, because I always want to appear strong, like I had my act together. And eventually I talked to him, and I remember two things that he said that were pretty life changing in those moments, in that darkness as well. One was, he was such a good brother moment. Adam, this is going to help you to be empathetic in a way that you've never been able to be empathetic before. He says, because you've always known what it's like. You've known intellectually what this looks like. And he says, you've never felt this before. And he says, you have empathy with people in a way that you've never had empathy with people because of what you're going through right now. And so that was a great blessing. And he said that in the very kind, beautiful, brotherly way. And he argues with me, this isn't what he said. If it wasn't what he said, it's what I needed to hear. And
Yes, so what God translated for you. Yeah.
He also said, he says, isn't it amazing? And he says, that's not what I said, but I was like, man, it's what I needed to hear. He says, isn't it amazing how for the first time in Adam's life, he couldn't succeed at something? And I was like, there it is, Jesus. That's the wound that I cause in people. That's the wound that I do, that I always have to look like I have to have it together. That I always look like he's got it. I mean, if he doesn't have it, he's going to come up with a plan to solve it, and he's going to do that. That was right in that moment. I said, Jesus, that's what we have to talk about. And that's why I have to get involved with all these different things and get some coaching, because I don't have all the answers, as much as I want everybody to think I have all of the answers, or make it appear as though I have all the answers, or so. And sometimes I am okay at that. But at that time I didn't. And I needed to go through that in order to get to the spot of humility in my life to say, all right, Jesus, I'm surrendering. I'm calling uncle, and I need you. And I did not know. I thought I had faith at that point. And then Jesus showed me, he says, oh, you think it's that difference between belief and trust. I believed in him and believed in him deeply. And I would say I had many radical acts of trust throughout my life. But that was the first time I really felt that it was a complete and utter act of trust. Like I could not rely on any of my gifts, of any of my skills. I said, Jesus, I'm just surrendering this all to you, because nothing's going according to my plan. And that was the moment where I felt, this is what real faith is. And I had just encountered it 2.5 years ago, and I was a priest for 5.5 years at that point. So so that was big, huge. And that
it's amazing how, sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Yep.
I was just thinking, it's amazing how, it's not one and done with God, is it? Like, I love the scripture from John chapter 15, I'm the vine, you're the branches. Prunes those branches that don't bear fruit and tosses them. The ones that do bear fruit, he prunes those too, so they bear more fruit. This feeling of getting pruned at different times, it hurts, but it's for our good, just like your brother was saying. Like, what a beautiful, you're blessed to have a wonderful family, and your mom and your brother, and I'm sure others, but these times where they could speak into you in ways that obviously landed and made a difference. But this is beautiful pruning. He wants us to grow and be even better. And usually we can't get better until we tap out what we know. And that's what I see in coaching all the time is people will get to a certain point and now they have to choose because they're going to have to evolve, whether it's the pastor or the pastor and his leadership team. It's like, yes, you've been very successful to here, but you're not going to get to that next level by taking all the same attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, ways of what you're doing. That's not going to get you to the next level. And you have to decide, is it good enough to stay here? Or are you willing to evolve? And it takes a lot of energy. It's scary. There's no guarantees. It's like, I know now you have to go in faith because up until now you've gone on your ability and capacity. But the next walk is a faith walk.
Yeah.
And I see it, and just beautiful that you're able to do that.
Yeah, thanks be to God for it, because I mean, it's always those dark moments in life that lead us to a new creation, and we're entering into that. That's been the gift. Just all of those things that I was very like, just before we got on this podcast, I was sitting with a couple of people on my leadership team, and just that sense of being, just this last couple of weeks has just been overwhelming. And just to be able to sit with my leadership team and to be able to say, guys, like, I don't have to bear it on my own anymore. Like, guys, like I don't want to be the one to bring you all down today, but I need to talk some stuff out. I'm frustrated, and in the past, I felt the brunt of just having to do that all on my own. And the gift of a leadership team to just be able to say, hey guys, I know I'm not usually the Debbie Downer of the group or anything, like I try not to be that. I try to maintain, but we try to be really honest. We always do our colors before we do a meeting. And I said,
Tell
I'm
us
just,
about the colors. I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. So, what we do is at the beginning of every meeting, red, yellow, green. And you can, so those kind of, and it's been so helpful on doing that, where we just say, today, if I'm red, I'm like, talk me off the ledge. I'm about ready to lose my mind. I can't handle anymore. Take some stuff off my plate. I need you. Help me, Yellow, I'm not great, but I'm not about ready to lose my mind completely. And then green, I'm ready to run, I'm ready to go, whatever we got to do. And it gives us a chance to know what kind of meeting we're going to have to begin with.
That's so good.
We have that sense of like, okay, all three of us are yellow or below, or all four of us are yellow or below. Well, then it's not going to be about what do we need to accomplish today. What we need to accomplish right now at this meeting is saying, like, how do we like lean into one another on a human level and help and breathe the Holy Spirit into that with one another, pray with one another, right? Like listen to one another, to be able to understand, like, oh wow, Father's really struggling, like, what he's going through right now. And like in the past, I just have to, like, I got to figure that out on my own, or I'll call a brother priest 4 hours away and say, hey brother, like, I'm struggling right now. Not every priest is going to do that either,
It's true.
And so we just sit there and we bear it and we bear it. And now to be able to go to them, and at the end of that conversation, because I told them, I said, I'm like orange, maybe yellow would be too positive. It wouldn't be honest for me to say, and
Right.
so I just kind of told them that, and they know, and it's very rare where I'm in that lower half of the color scheme, to begin with. And so they knew, it's like, we need to support Father right now, and to just come out of that meeting saying, okay, I got some of that stuff off and I'm not sitting with it anymore. There's still some of those problems still exist, but they started helping, like, Father, what about this? What about that? And then praying together with it, and reminding me, like, hey, have you stopped to spend some time with Jesus? I was like, yes. However, I apparently need some more, and so can you do it with me?
Right.
That's been so helpful, because that's what coaching helped me to see, because I had tried putting my own teams together thinking, I'm pretty good at this team thing, and think I can do that. And that maybe is some helpful things to talk about here would be, I created an awful team dynamic. I didn't know that I did, but I just said created tension, and I didn't know the things. I didn't know how to solve the problems. These problems were above my level of understanding. It's like, well, I know that we need to be vulnerable with one another. I'm trying to be vulnerable, but these other people aren't getting vulnerable with me because they were intimidated by me. And I didn't know that, but like they were,
Right.
and so I was just always a lot, and you can imagine that based on this conversation, I suppose, and it's tempered a little bit. And so this is a tempered side, thanks be to God. It's still not perfect by any means, but um, the sense of, like, for instance, I knew if we were going to do this, we had to have certain people on board with the future and the vision and the leadership. And I knew one of them was going to be our principal. I said, I have to get the principal on board. And
Yeah.
she would definitely not care about me sharing. We were a mess. Like her and I's relationship, it was bad. It was really, and there were times I can think of at least 3 or 4 times when I was getting this all figured out. She walked out of meetings because she was so angry with me, and I was like, well, she needed to walk out of, like just pride,
Yeah.
like all of,
Yeah.
and what was the frustration? I didn't understand what we started to learn as we got into coaching more. Hey, Father, she was a newer Catholic. I have I had high expectations about what a person should be living in their spiritual
Yes.
life and how they should be living that. And she felt incredibly intimidated as a newer Catholic by the expectations that I set for her. And then simultaneously, she wouldn't care. Like, as we talk about this regularly, like she had trust issues that she, like, just common core trust issues where wounds were that needed to be worked through. And it's that intricate balance between, like, I love helping people work through trust wounds and all of that, except I was her boss and her leader, and at the same time trying to lead her through that. And it created this greater level of tension. I was like, you got to share this stuff. And she was not comfortable wanting to share it with me. And I was trying to
Right.
bulldoze those things out of her. And so I was like, in order to get anywhere, we're going to have to do this, and I didn't do it in the right way oftentimes. And
Mm.
she got frustrated with me because I tend to look at the world from a very strategic, big picture, wondering and considering things and how do we make things better. And she tends to be very tactical and task driven and get tasks done. And so she was frustrated with me because she felt my mind was always in the clouds. Like, you're always thinking about like the next thing and the new idea or whatever, how we're going to solve the next thing, and you're never doing the thing, and then meanwhile I was like, well, that's why we don't ever get anything done, because you're always doing the thing, putting out fires. We never think about how to actually solve them. And we were grappling, and it was ugly, and it got really messy. So much so, like I said, she walked out of meetings and she was frustrated and she didn't feel supported by me. And I thought for sure at certain points, like, I'm gonna have to let her go. We're not gonna make it. There's no
Yeah.
way we're gonna make it. And
Very common thought. Yeah.
and um, I worked with the coach a little bit, and he even sat in on some of our meetings virtually, and he'd be like, Father, did you realize like what you did or what you said when you were in the middle of that staff meeting? And like, well, she needed to hear it. She's like, did she really need to hear that?
Right.
And so just be and think it was something that I realized, like, I could not be the one to solve that. I needed someone else to help me learn how to work through a
Yeah.
deeply problematic team dynamic. And now it's so awesome, like the difference of where we are today,
Really.
because
So you were able to
she,
repair that
we
and build
were,
trust and stop it. That is
yes,
awesome.
it is awesome. It was really cool because we we are running together in a way that I never thought. It was nothing short of a miracle by the grace of God that we got
Right.
there, because she didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think it was going to work. And both of us just said, all right, we're going to be humble and we're going to take this. And it meant some really difficult, ugly conversations at times, but I
Were
had
they
to learn
facilitated conversations or
some
were
of,
they?
yes,
Yep.
yes. Some of those were very, yeah. And then we started to learn how to do those better ourselves. And we don't need quite as much
Nice.
facilitation because we know
Right.
now, like, oh, we know where, and like, to think 2 years ago, like, she'll be at a meeting with me and she'll say something like, hey, Father, the thing that you're doing right now that drives everybody crazy, you're doing it right now. And 2 years ago, if she would have said that, I'd come unglued. I would have come, I would have absolutely, I would have said, who the heck are you to tell me, you know? Whereas now she'll say that to me and I'll be like, I am doing the thing that I do right now that drives everybody crazy. Thank you for calling that out, Karen. And it's poor girl. Her name is Karen in the middle of all of this
What
stuff
a,
with COVID. and
yeah,
so, but God bless her, because the same thing for me. I'm like, hey, Karen, hey, the thing you do right now that drives everybody crazy, and we know what it is, and she knows what it is for me, and I know what
yeah.
it is for her. And why? Because we trust one another. We didn't trust one another before, and it took
Mm,
a long time to get there, and to have just greater understanding of how that works and the dynamics of that. It's been a game changer, and she will now. What we do is, like, she'll send me a message at the beginning of the week, and we do our one-on-one meeting together on Thursdays, and she'll send me a list. She's like, and what she used to do is she'd bombard me with 15 things all at once, and that's going to send me into meltdown mode. I'm not. If I have time to think through a problem, I can come up with a pretty good solution. But if you throw a bunch of them at me at once,
yeah.
I'm not going to. I go into panic mode.
Mm,
And so now what she'll do is we lean into each other's strengths, where she'll send me just here's the three most important things that I need you to think about between now and Thursday. And on Thursday, I'm going to come at it with some pretty good ideas, because I've had 3 or 4 days to think about it already. And I'm going to come there and I'm going to be able to help her, support her through tough things that she finds exhausting, because she doesn't like looking at that big picture problem and solving those.
right.
While meanwhile, I'm sitting at my desk and I have 15 things sitting on, and I'm pulling my hair out. I don't have that much to lose, but I'm pulling my hair out to, like, get all of this done. She's like, hey, she loves doing those kind of things. Can I do 2 or 3 of those things for you and just get those off your desk? And that that's the different, like, it's support and accountability, like, I know she's going to support me, and I don't have to worry about her. I don't get frustrated that she's good at what she's good at. I'm glad
Mm,
she's good what she's good at, instead of being angry that
mm,
she's not good
right.
at the thing I'm
Not,
good at.
amen.
And that has been the big game changer of working together. And she's the biggest example on our team, but other examples on the team as well.
It's a
Yeah.
couple of things that it's just it's such a victory story. Like, thanks be to God, because those aren't always easy to turn around. And kudos to your coach. Like, way to go, man. Like that is so great when we can help people through trust issues on teams and really contentious situations. It's so exciting, because those are the best stories ever, like, because they need to happen. A couple of things I just want to bring up. One of them is that you're the only person, and I'm not saying other people don't, but I know very few people that have been able to work with a principal on their leadership team, not because they don't want them on their leadership team, because they're usually very well educated, very faithful, tons of skills, like they're great, but they're also so weighed down and busy with all their responsibility at their school
Mm-hmm.
that they often don't have the time. So that's really neat that you've been able to make that work.
Mm-hmm. It has been. And like I said, I didn't think it was going to work, and for a long time, but we did. And it was ultimately, like, because this is what I get to do for her, in a sense, is I'll go over there and say, hey, do we need to pull out of, like, quadrant one, as Stephen Covey calls it, like, urgent and important, what is it, important and urgent, at the same time. And what human beings tend to do is go between quadrant one and quadrant four, which is important and urgent, to not important and not urgent. And
Yeah.
that's like Netflixing and watching. We live
Yes.
here so much that then we get exhausted. All we got left for is to sit and veg and watch TV for a long time. And so we
Right.
don't end up. And my wheelhouse is quadrant two, which is
Right.
important but not urgent.
Right. And those are
And
leadership issues that
mhm,
transform organizations. Yes.
yep. So, and I always refer to that. I said that's also what on the spiritual level we call prayer. And so
Well,
we go
just
to
to put a dig into the person who's a real task oriented. Attaboy, way to stick it to him.
yeah. And so anyhow, I say, hey, I'm gonna come in there and we're gonna spend some time pulling out of quadrant one for a little while. We're going to spend some time getting out of the tactical world, because that's what she lives in. And I get it. And I don't want to live in her world, because it would drive me insane.
Yeah.
I could not
No,
do it.
I burn you out.
It would destroy me. And,
Yeah.
but she can, and she can do it. But it doesn't mean that I can't go in there and say, hey, because she needs it sometimes too. Everybody can only
Mhm.
handle so much of that, even if you
Amen.
enjoy it. Just
Mhm.
say, hey, let's get out of this. And that's why we every morning when we do our parish leadership team meetings, we tell her come over to our office, because our office is much more quiet, and it's gonna be more peaceful. There aren't gonna be kids coming in with bloody noses, or teachers hollering down the hallway or whatever. It's at the office at the parish is a lot more going to be a more peaceful setting. So every day
Mm.
you come over here so that we can get you out and do our 15-minute check-in every day, so that you can get out of the chaos. And if you need to go back into the chaos, you have a little more peace going back into it.
Mm.
And when I need to be reminded that it's nice and peaceful over here, as much as I don't think it is sometimes,
Just
and
go
I'm
over to the
overwhelmed,
school.
I go over to the school and be like, oh, how do you get anything done? And we can lean into each other on it's just the gift of using each other's strengths instead of getting frustrated with our weaknesses. So
Yeah. How's
mm,
the what is the parish scene? Like how have they has anybody made any comments in terms of what they've witnessed in you?
oh yeah, especially leadership.
Mm.
Our We have grown from, I mean, when I first started, we just had we had our parish secretary, who's also on my leadership team, which is an awesome story of cool transformation too, because she definitely saw herself as like a 9 to 4:30 kind of person. Like
Mhm.
this is a job. I come in from 9 to 4:30, and she is on mission with us now. Like it's awesome to see her shift of mindset to like, no, this is a mission that I have, and I have a particular goal and role in that mission. And
Mhm.
so she has seen that, because she was on the leadership team with me when it was extremely dysfunctional as well. But she's kind of a
Right.
peacekeeper. She's always one to figure out, like, she's pretty easy going. Is it going to get worked up one way or the other?
Mm.
And so she has walked through those foibles with me, and she would definitely say, okay, yeah, father's different. But the beauty is I see that she's different too,
Yeah.
like she is now like leaning in, because I've been honest with her. I said there were times I was worried in the past that you would never want anything more than just a job from 9 to 4:30, and I prayed about that, and I was like, Jesus, how do
Mhm.
we get her to want more? And it's the beauty of investing more into her. And even now she's much better, because like at a staff meeting, um we like I tend to use strategy and look at big picture and pull us out, and let's wonder about that. She's
Mhm.
much more tactical as well, like get things done. And I said, no, you need to lead our team meetings at staff, because if I do, I get us dreaming about all kinds of, like, at those staff meetings, they need to be tactical. They need to get things done.
Mhm.
And I don't help get things done a lot of times. I come up with more problems and how do we solve these,
More opportunities. Yeah.
exactly. And so she leads those, and that's just a complete game changer. Now she feels like, I think it
Mm.
was a line you used in our last talk together. Um, that sense of don't delegate tasks, but delegate authority. And
Mm.
and now she gets it well enough that I don't have to just delegate tasks to her. I can delegate the authority, like, Patty, like, I need you to lead these meetings because you're going to do it better than I am, because it's a different these kind of meetings I don't lead as well. So can you lead them for me? And she's like, and she was nervous. I said, I'll be there. I'll walk through it with you. But now she's been doing it for months now, and they're much more effective meetings than they were than I was leading them. So, and
That's so empowering. Like, way to go. Like, I can't imagine how much she's grown as a result of your friendship and your trust. And as you evolved and recognize you, just because you're the priest doesn't mean you have to lead everything. There are going to be some things you're better at than others. And so call on the gifts of others for the good of everybody, for the good of the mission. It's just so solid, so fun.
Mhm.
One of the things you said, and I just find it interesting, and I see it all the time, and I'm sure you do too. Like, but just remember when you were going to a Catholic college, you didn't necessarily stoked to go just because it was a Catholic place to
Mhm.
continue to live out your faith. More so, they recruited you for baseball, and then it was a lovely girlfriend who said, "You should really take your faith more seriously. Why don't you go do this study or whatever?" Um, and yet, that's the very attitude and perspective that frustrates the daylights out of you after you've surrendered your life, after you've become a priest, after you've been in a parish. It's like you are your past self is your current self's biggest frustration. And isn't it wild how we all of a sudden have no patience for that
Yep.
person? It's like,
Hmm.
what? We literally came from that place, because I did too. Like I said,
Yep.
church, oh, it's so boring. Do I really
Hmm.
have to go, Mom? Like this stinks. You know,
Uh-huh.
to and so that it's funny how we can lose sensitivity and sometimes become um, less aware of what it's like to not
Hmm.
have that encounter, that relationship, that absolute confidence of how much I'm loved by God, who just, as crazy as it sounds, like he's real and it's so beautiful. And it's like, yeah, but I didn't always know that either.
Amen to that. And it is like we become so impatient. Yes, we're least patient with the people that are most like us, right? And so that's that, because we see their weakness draws out what we also need to work on. And if we don't take that to Jesus, that turns into a wound instead of, and
Mm,
like, oh, I still need work on that. And I know they struggle with that. And so it in turns, if it doesn't get brought over to Jesus, it just turns into woundedness. And,
yeah.
it's funny you say that, because that's been one of the coolest things for me is like my principal Karen, who I was talking about, she always felt like early on, she always felt as though she's never going to be holy enough, because I made her feel that. I didn't try to make her feel that way, but I made her
Right.
feel that way. I'll never be holy enough. I'll never be at the level he wants me to be.
Mm,
And what's so cool to see today is her transformation. She says, Father, now I see why you were so frustrated with all of the teachers at the school. But like, why? Because she says, like, now she's drawing that out of them, and some of them get it really well, and others she's trying to get there. And now she's taking that very thing. She's like, it's just even that helps me, and in my own way.
yes.
Oh, she's struggling with what I struggled with, and now she's frustrated with them because she gets it now and they don't get it now, and she wants to get them to get it, and some of them do and some of them don't. She's irritated. She's like, they're so irritating when they're that way. She's like, Father, I'm so sorry I was that way. And I said, just that peace that comes and hearing her say that, and what you were saying there. Now she's frustrated in the same way I was, and
Yeah.
like to see that what a gift and a blessing. And now I can
Yeah.
walk with her through it, because I'll say, hey, remember when we were here, when you're frustrated with so and so teacher at the school who isn't getting on board with your desire to go make
Mm,
disciples and get all of this stuff happening, or doesn't want to share their witness talk or whatever it is, and you're
mm,
frustrated because they don't want to share their witness talk. Well, she says, and now she gets you. I said, let's remember where we were at one point, and
mm.
I said, we got to keep walking with them. We'll walk with them, and if we see, that's the gift, little by little. And so that's really cool. What you brought up, it
Yeah.
went right into that.
It's beautiful. I see my, I think about, the friends that I have who I love dearly. I just have so many great friends who I love dearly, and they don't have faith. Some of them, maybe were baptized as babies and stuff, but don't have faith. And I think to myself, like, it's not a case of better than or anything like that. Like, I don't know what feelings people feel around me sometimes that it's, or you, that it's like, oh, he thinks he's better, he thinks I'm not good enough, or it's like, no, it's actually none of those things. I
Mhm.
remember when I was a young dad, and the, the young fella next door, their marriage didn't work out, and so the mom was bringing the young boy who we just loved over. He was a couple of years older than my son. My son was only like, I don't know, 2 or 3. He wasn't very old. And he'd spend, an hour and a half in the morning before he went to school, because his mom had to go to work a little early, and we were glad to have him. And I'll never forget this. Every day when I would leave for work, I was in the pharmaceutical industry, I'd iron my shirt, which was a lost cause because I never left the house with an iron shirt. It'd always get re-wrinkled again because I'd be hugging my kids and stuff. And so every day I'd grab my son and I'd hug him and I'd kiss him and I'd tickle him and I'd tell him how great he was and how much I loved him. And every day he'd come running when he knew I was leaving, because for that affection,
Mm.
for that hug, for that kiss, for that tickle. And that one morning I was leaving, him and his friend came running to the door, and I picked up Christian and I did all that to him again. And his friend was just standing there with his big eyes looking and smiling and thought it was great. And then I put him down and I was just about to go out the door, and my son said, "Hey, Dad, what about him?" And I thought to myself, oh, well. And I grabbed him and I picked him up and I kissed him and I hugged him, and he's squirming and laughing, and I was tickling him. I told him how great he was and how much I loved him. And I put him back on beside my son, and my son's face was beaming. And I went out to the car and I sat in the car, and I realized that's what it's like to share the love of your father with your best friend.
Wow.
And so often when I do what I do, even both of us, we do what we do because if you don't know Christ, if you're listening today, or you know somebody and they don't know Christ, or you don't know Christ, we're not judging you. Like, we love you. And I'll tell you, your Father in heaven loves you so much. And if somehow I was better at helping facilitate that experience, no matter how old you are, no matter how much money you have or you don't have, or where you came from or what your ethnic background is, doesn't matter. If I could help you, if I could point to my dad and say, "Dad, what about her? What about him?" and get him to pick you up like that, that's why you and I do what we do, isn't it?
And wow, that was powerful stuff. Thanks for sharing that. What a cool story of understanding, and that is why we do what we do. And yeah, again, those that might be listening to this, just know the love the Father has for you, and that the only reason sometimes my personality or other people's personality gets overzealous, or maybe your mom gets overzealous trying to get you back to the faith, is because there's as Jesus says, there's a pearl there, and sometimes we scare people, but the goal is never to scare you. It's because we so badly want others to know the love that which we have encountered, and that it's there for everybody. It's not just for one person or two. It's there for us all. And so that is awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I just think about Karen. Karen's there. She knows it now. And I'm just so grateful for the Karens of the world. And so, Father Adam, thanks for everything you do. Thanks for such a cool conversation. These aren't necessarily easy conversations to have. Not a lot of people are willing to have them. I just appreciate your courage and your openness. And I really believe a lot of people are going to be encouraged by you today and your honesty. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm glad to be asked to do it. I appreciate you getting me together to do this, because sometimes we don't do these kind of things unless someone calls us out as well. So thank you for listening to the Spirit and giving me the opportunity.
Amen. Amen. You're most welcome. And for all of you that were listening or watching today on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. I hope that you'll share this podcast with somebody that you believe will really enjoy it. Please subscribe, hit the thumbs up, add a comment or a question. We love interacting with you. Thank you for everything you do to make your business or your church amazing, because we really are in the business of making others great. God bless you all.
I want to encourage you, as you lead this week, be faithful to God and generous to others. See you next time, and remember, if you're still breathing, you